Let's jump into the game. And of course, very much on the contrary, Matt, it was not a very disappointing loss for Australia in one sense, potentially because they thought they could have, returned a result in this game. Definitely not significantly the worst team at all. Italy are one of the powerhouses of this age group, as you spoke with us last week about. And it was an early penalty given away by Hall, the keeper, that allowed Italy to go ahead. And from there, definitely in patches of the game, Australia had lots of possession, lots of control over the game. There were gilt-edged chances to Daniel Benny and Luka Jovanovic that probably get put away more often than not. But unfortunately, when the moment came, they weren't quite ready with the composure in that moment. So it is a 1-0 loss for Australia to start off the group. But I listened to the post-match interviews with Trevor Morgan and Sebastian Esposito after the game, and they were very consistent in their feelings that this was a pretty good performance against one of the best teams in the world. And obviously a loss is not the kind of note you want to start on, but in terms of the performance and taking into consideration the forgiving nature of this tournament structure as well, I think they have a lot to be happy about.
Yeah, look, I think got a wide variety of opinions, and I think you couldn't help but sort of get a little bit, of an over-exaggeration about ourselves, just because it's so rare. In fact, it's basically never really happened, certainly for people around our ages, to see an Australian national team go up against a UEFA powerhouse in Italy and just play so confidently on the front foot as they did for most of that first half. Like it's just a very foreign feeling. And so I think it invoked a lot of very strong feelings of confidence and of, arrogance isn't the right word, but I just feel that there is definitely the feeling that we're almost robbed in a way, because one sumptuous ball to play in the penalty incident, and that's sort of undone us and undone the tempo of the game. But we've still persisted in that first half, mostly playing through our system and, being on the front foot. And mind you, I think Italy were quite set up for the counter. I think they'd obviously done their research on us pretty well, and I don't think they would have really been shell-shocked by it. I think they were expecting Australia to come out on the front foot. But just the very concept of that is incredible. The fact that we were playing, an Italian national team, a national team that, like you say, Lachie, are really one of the best going around. And it's incredible that the game in those initial sort of earlier period it played out the way that it did. But then you sort of reflect on the Luke chance, the Daniel chance, and that's maybe where you might even get a little bit pessimistic, because I think what you personally take away from this game as an Australian football observer, I think that the natural verdict on this is about how high you set the bar. If your bar's higher because, hey, we're Asian champions, we should actually be going toe-to-toe with a team like this, I think you look at the personal performance of someone like Daniel Benny and you probably take away from it quite negatively. Someone like Seb Esposito, I think, conducted himself really well. But you'd almost have to say that he, as the leader of the team, was there more he could have done to sort of stop the flow of the Italian counter, the way they broke through us multiple times. And I think I understand that line of thought, because there were a lot of people sort of pushing back on me saying, well, is it really, really that good if Italy was still able to do this and have that effect on the game? And that's still inherently very true. So I think it's all about sort of what we believe our standards to be in what we're able to then sort of take away from things. So I naturally come back to the fact that, I see the angle you're sort of taking on here is it's a bloody good performance, and it is. But if we want the standard to be higher, if we want the journey that we've taken to be one that we really actually can be proud of, and one that will make us, that global standard of quality better for things like, the FA's pending sort of restructure in the curriculum and that whole conversation, then I think that the impact of this is really lost, because we've ultimately failed to reach that goal, and it's tough because, again, I don't think we've played overly that bad, but you can see how it's still, like in other ways, in Australian sort of national team sphere of influence in years prior, we're still probably missing out and just lacking, and things are falling short. And so I'm caught between being really optimistic and being really pessimistic, and I hate that, but I think it just inherently comes with the fact that this is a result that's really, really annoying on paper, and we've got an Argentina team that, because of an early red card in their game, we've not seen the full sort of stretch of their powers. So game two, I'm probably even more nervous for now, knowing that it's going to be really hard to get a read both from us and both from what's left to come in Group D.
It feels like whichever perspective you take on this game, 1-0 should have got something more, or a good performance against a very good team might almost be reflected on the results of the next matches as well. If you manage to win 2 more games and then get out of the group, it's, well, okay, that performance against Italy was a platform. But all of a sudden, if you stumble against Argentina, or you fall to third place in the group and get a bad draw in the round of 16, then it's okay. That's a missed opportunity against Italy. These things always kind of run this fine line. Christian, what were your first impressions?
Yeah, I mean, from all accounts, Australia, they performed, right? On this stage against, as you said, one of the powerhouses, albeit, I'm trying to look at it with a lens, like these are the tournaments that sort of give you a sort of a false sense of hope in a way, because yes, I think you should be optimistic with this result, but at the same time, you look at this Italy squad and it's not the same talent as we've seen in previous years, right? I mean, there were a lot of clubs in Serie A which held their top players back. You have like a striker from Inter, Esposito up front, who scored on the weekend. A player from Lecce scored as well this week. So there's a lot of players who should be in this squad but aren't. So it's like you're trying to measure yourself against the best, and it's like, oh, well, maybe are they actually a step above?
That's true of pretty much every team in this competition, though, in terms of missing like players at clubs.
It is. And that goes to my next point, where I know it's very hard to predict, obviously, the future generations, because obviously under 20 World Cup, you only get the same crop of players once or twice every tournament, right? Before you get the next batch of youth. But I think if we continue on this path towards investing in our youth, at A-League level, giving these kids a lot of opportunities, I can really see ourselves making a push for quarters or semis in the not so distant future. I really mean that, because you've got obviously the nations like Spain, for example, who are always going to be up there, right? England, who always prioritize their youth, and they're playing 16, 17-year-old kids at, La Liga and Premier League level. It's ridiculous, some of these top talents. But I think Australia are one of these sides now where you see the talent on display. It's just, on paper, it looks really, really promising. It's a shame that you can't really mold it all together in terms of week in, week out. You can't play. And I know that's for every single country. And a lot of, like the Spains and the Englands get bailed out with that individual talent, that moment of quality, which we lacked severely in this game against Italy, right? If we took those couple of, really golden chances in that first half, then the game's different, right? We're talking about a different story. So I think all in all, it is positive, but, at the same token, you have to sort of look at it as, is it their full strength side? And I will add as well, that mistake in the second half we made, like playing out from the back and Italy almost scoring from that. I think they hit the post. It's like, it frustrates me because I think we've had this same conversation before, I think with you, Lachie, a few weeks ago, about, the direction of Australian football, our identity. It's like, we don't always have to just play one way. This is a fragile Italy side, I thought, trying to play, some possession-based football, just get into them a bit, just, put in a few more tackles, trying to be a bit more aggressive, show that bit of grit instead of, having to always pass out from the back, try and find the perfect pass. I think this is a game which required a bit of that something extra. I don't know if Matt agrees, but yeah, I think that's one of the things I would have loved to see a bit more from this Australia side, like a Battle Arto, for example, who likes to get stuck in. I would like to see him get stuck in a bit more, but all in all, I think you can't really complain too much to go down only 1-0, early goal as well, and to be able to stay composed and to be in the game as long as they were. I think it shows real signs of promise for the rest of the tournament.
I think that's an interesting observation, Matt. I'll let you have your go at it as well, because there was, I think, enough long ball play. Like Stephen Hall was moving the ball long at points in times. It wasn't like, play out from the back or die. Obviously, they were doing it a fair bit, and that goes into the kind of bravery theme that Trevor Morgan's been talking about for months on end now. They want to be brave and take the game on and not just play that football. But there was moments in the game where lots of those long balls, they were proving to win those kind of second balls down in midfield really frequently. So that was a productive kind of tactic at times. And then, they did want to move the ball back out because, they wanted to have Italy on that kind of line of, do we stretch, do we go deeper, and kind of leave those gaps in the middle. And obviously they did step one too far. I don't know who you'd exactly put the blame on. Ocon probably didn't quite see the player advancing from his wrong side and was under pressure a little quicker than he thought. And then maybe the ball from Hall wasn't quite to his advantage as well. So there was that moment, and that could have easily been two. And then the conversation we have is probably different, which again feels unfair to say on just, the kind of edge of one specific moment. But Matt, this team, the young Socceroos, trying to be brave and trying to play their football, has been quite consistent again with Trevor Morgan as a coach, and sometimes contradictory to some of the other teams. Maybe not in the fact of only playing their way, but that specific way being very brave, very high pressing, and really taking the game on to some of these bigger nations.
I just naturally think that the way that we've sort of moved on from the Asian Cup to implementing something like that, and obviously we had a lot of sort of pre-tournament hitouts against the likes of Ukraine and Nigeria, who are really good quality opposition to be coming up against. I actually think Ukraine, after certainly their result against South Korea, shape up as one of the better teams at the tournament. Christian, you highlighted a country like Spain. Spain lost 2-0 this morning. So, I think if there's one thing to take away from where our system's kind of fitting in the way that we've played, I think let's also take into respect with the fact that I think like you highlighted, Lachie, and as I've highlighted on the show previously, Italy are one of the better teams at the tournament. So that the natural progression in that jump compared to how we've set up, I think naturally that plays into a lot of the young Socceroos that we've really end up seeing on the day. And I think it highlights a lot of, the bravery, those challenges, the ability to get stuck in, the sort of misfire that someone like Alex Battleado's had, to Christian's point. So much of that comes into the fact that this is probably the highest quality of opposition that we may face for the entire tournament. And I think that's really worth keeping in mind. The draw is really unkind to us, and that Argentina are a country that's still probably going to come in as a considerable favourite in our game. But when you look at the whole 2014 tournament as a whole, and when you look at sort of U20 football globally, this generation, what they've achieved as Asian champions and the way that they've still controlled tempo for large periods of this game, I really do kind of believe that you talk about, Christian, we can be making knockouts, we can be making quarters, semis, whatever. This generation can actually do that now. And I'm just looking at the numbers. I'm looking at the other teams I've seen play in this tournament. Respectfully, most of Group A, with Chile being the pot one team, I just don't think they shape up that well, I watched Paraguay's match with Panama. Panama's defence was a disgrace. New Zealand was solid, but I think we know a lot of what New Zealand's got because it's mostly an A-League team that we saw out there, and they lost their heads a little bit. Mm-hmm. Chile got completely lucky with that game. That's just Group A, South Korea looked ordinary at times. Egypt were miserable against Japan. I could go on, but the point is, we are genuinely one of the better teams at this tournament. We just objectively are. So the fact that we've had to come up against Italy, you kind of run the numbers on that. The diagnostics shape up quite frustrating, and that's also something that you can kind of take away from this game, is that for everything that's gone wrong, I really would just remind you all that it is genuinely like the best caliber of opponent that we are going to try and implement that system against. Play the game we've just played against Cuba. How do you think it ends up? This is a Cuban side that's completely lost their head and not been able to play well with a man advantage against Argentina. I'm pretty sure we see a completely different result. I think we do see players get stuck in. I think we do see someone like Alex play into the game more comfortably. I think we see Daniel be less hesitant on his feet. We see Luca, not beat himself up. He threw his bottle down on the floor and really beat himself up that he didn't score that equaliser. I think you just take that away, and we see a better version of ourselves just naturally through that. So, I get what you get. I get your sort of overarching theme of the question of are we doing enough? Has that been implemented? Are we seeing it? But I think, regardless of what the overall theme is on this particular game, there is an overall theme going forward and a belief that you can harbour in this team. And I believe Trevor's system, because we've seen him implement what he's wanted to implement, and we've seen success. We are Asian champions. We've seen success for the first time. So I just, I don't want to act like we're about to go and win a World Cup. But I still actually display a lot of confidence in the system, So it's really hard to tell. Again, because the game could be more of a sign of how we might look, and those mistakes and things that crept through, they might be more serious on a long-term basis. But I'd still just reflect on the fact that I think in the broader scheme of the whole tournament, we really do look quite good.
It's interesting when we think about the comparisons between different generations of Australian youth teams. in a complete moment of serendipity, I was reminded of some of those differences. I've been re-listening to Ange Ball, Vince Rugari's book on Ange Postecoglou, of course, and one of the chapters in there is about the interview of Craig Foster with Ange, that infamous interview on the World Game that Ange says put his career back 1 to 2 years, and the criticisms of him as he failed to qualify for junior world tournaments. And one of the central differences between that time and this is that it's not a squad that was, had a training camp in Sydney and was put together, kind of in a few months and sent off to these qualifiers. This core group of under-20s that is playing under Trevor Morgan, a lot of them did so when he was managing the under-17s, and they've come through together, and they've been as a group for a long time. They've had this Asian Cup triumph together, and then they've continued on development together to this under-20 World Cup. So this is a very stable group. And of course, international football is its own beast. You don't have these week in, week out training sessions like club football, but relative to a lot of the others, generations of Australian youth teams and the other teams that are at this tournament, this group actually knows each other decently well. So I think you can go forward with a lot of faith from that. They'll know how to pick themselves up. I think it's going to be a great teaching moment. I think you're going to look at the likes of Jovanovic throwing his bottle down. Moussa Touré was furious when he got substituted off as well. I'm not sure if that was at the substitution itself or the fact that, he maybe didn't get everything he wanted out of the game. But the ability to have a game like that and turn your heads around and move forward is going to be very valuable. Maybe we should touch on some of the individual performances as well. You mentioned a few of the names, but through the spine of the team, I thought Paul Okonengsler was the best player in the park, aptly supported by Esposito and Toure. And Daniel Benny, once, yes, he had moments of maybe hesitation, but, that flick on to play Jovanovic through in behind, a couple of his balls in from wide areas as well, I thought he was outstanding. So there is a core of that team, Christian, that is playing really, really well. You still have the likes of some really talented players on the bench who didn't quite make their impact. Jalen Pearman. We have the Manchester United fullback who's named James Overy, who we haven't seen yet. He's supposed to be one of the best players in this age group as well, but obviously he wasn't a part of that Asian Cup team, so he might make his impact later on the tournament. But all in all, and maybe you can touch to some of the individuals as well, but really, really positive, great individual performances in there as well. And yeah, onwards to Argentina.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not just the individual quality on paper. It's a team collective, right? I think that goes to a point about the camp and this being able to bond together. It's not just picking players left, right, and center and just chucking them into a camp, right? This team has good chemistry, right? From youth level onwards, whether it be under 17s, under 20s. A lot of these players have played multiple games together. We saw at the Asian Cup how well they were able to perform, and that just wasn't based on talent. That was because as a collective, they were super impressive. And that was the same in this match today. And I think Matt touched on it at the start. Esposito was probably a big name for me as well, who really stood out in the back line, just really calm and composed, settled things down when he needed to. That really experienced head, which, I thought he was very impressive, along with Insera as well alongside him. So a lot of promising talent, like we've all stated, right? We know it, but it's, can they go deep at one of these tournaments? Matt thinks we can. I hope so, because I think this group really deserves some reward for its efforts over the past few years, developing. Can we finally get some reward? It'll be great to see.
Matt, just briefly, any individuals you want to touch on?
No, you put me on the spot.
No? Okay.
You really put me on the spot there.
Look, I thought Alex Badalado out left was probably quiet. He probably didn't have as much to do as he would have liked.
I think, again, that goes back to the whole question of, are we getting stuck in? But I think a lot of that is really dependent on the quality of opponent here. And again, I come back to the fact that the things that sort of Luca, Musa, Daniel left short in attack, Paul Ocon's moments of sort of, falling short with a few things. A lot that was done defensively was pretty poor at times. I just feel that we still overall approached the game better, and a lot of where we came short was due to the quality of the opponents. So I think you kind of understand what I'm touching on there. You can't really pin it to an individual and say, oh, this person was really sort of their impact was something that you should look out for and that we missed and things like that. It's hard to read the game like that. It really is, because I think you put that performance against a different caliber of a team, and I hope anyway, with Argentina already having moments of discipline lapse. And because of Cuba's lack of quality, look, they've put 3 goals past them, but they did not play particularly well. And again, I come back to the fact that this is a squad that's mostly domestically based in Argentina. So again, you put us in that space where we are still going to play with the same confidence, back ourselves in. Don't I know these are younger guys, and again, I know we've already seen bits of behaviour from the forwards in particular where they were really beating themselves up. If I were Trevor, and again, I don't really know the logistics of it, if they've got sports psychologists and things like that with them, I swear to God, these guys just have to completely black out. Just stop thinking like that, because the Argentina game is there for the taking if we play exactly the same way. And I mean that, because if you create the Luka chance again and it's converted, you create the Daniel chance again and it's converted, we can beat Argentina. That is on offer for us. So I think the overall sentiment comes less about the individual quality and more about the team mindset. And that's where playing Italy first and the nature of the result can really undo you in a tournament scenario when it's all about that endurance over the month of play or the week of play that we're about to see. And I worry about that. I do, but I think what my overall theme here is that there's just the need to actually back these guys in and have themselves back themselves in. That's important. So I just point to the mentality any more than the individual quality, for sure.
All right, so Matt's alluded to it already, but that Argentina-Cuba game finished as a 3-1 win to Argentina. They won 1-0 up before that red card in the 10th minute, and then traded goals to sit it at 2-1 at halftime and played most of the rest of the game that way before Asila in the 90th minute. So that game against Argentina, which will be played on Thursday morning, 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Time, shapes up as who will finish second in this group. So still plenty to play for as well. And then the Cuba game a couple of days later needs to be a win for Australia to ensure, hopefully, a good seed in the round of 16. And look, again, encouraging start, and hopefully the boys can kick on